Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1998 film Bride of Chucky. And yes, it is the fourth film in this 7-film collection that I'm going through right now, and having a pretty fun time doing it, honestly. Was really looking forward to Bride of Chucky because I've heard a lot of people say that it's one of their favorite Chucky films, and I can easily see why. One of the big things that kind of sticks out with this film immediately, director Ronny Yu, who also did The Trail, The Phantom Lover, and Freddy vs. Jason, one I really enjoy, brings a really good aesthetic to the film. It really does stand out so far in the franchise, going through 4 films. Really stands out for the style. There's a lot of interesting camera work and camera angles to the film. It definitely feels the most stylish of all of the Chucky films, and I really appreciate that. So Ronny Yu did a nice job. Written by Don Mancini, who also has done Cellar Dweller, Child's Play 2, Child's Play 3, Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, some episodes of the show Hannibal, which is a great show, and Channel Zero, which is also a good show. Apparently, the doll sex scene in this film was improvised. I don't really know how you prepare yourself for a doll sex scene, but I will say that it was handled relatively well. I mean, it was a good mix of like funny and ridiculous. You have to know when you're doing a scene like that you can't really approach it from a serious angle so much. So I think they understood what they were doing, and it works. It works. It's funny and it's ridiculous, and they have the whole "do you have a rubber" joke that goes in there that I thought was pretty solid. The evidence room scene in the beginning of this film was originally in the script for Child's Play 2. Now, I talked about that in my Child's Play 2 review, so you can go back and listen to that. You can go back and watch and listen to all of them if you would like to. The most expensive Chucky film in the franchise, with a $25 million budget, and it's easy to see why. They did go relatively big. I mean, they blew up an RV. You know, that's how big they went with this. This is the first film in the franchise where Chucky doesn't actually lose any limbs before actually dying. That is an interesting thing, because if you think about it, he's getting pretty messed up in all the other films. It's a very tame death for him in comparison in this film, which is fine in my opinion, because in the other films, the best deaths were always Chucky's death. So in this film, there were better other deaths, so it was fine that Chucky didn't have this amazing, grandiose death, in my opinion. Gotta love the nods to other horror films in the beginning, like the hockey mask and the chainsaw, and I believe I quickly saw a Freddy glove in there in the evidence lockup room when Bailey is going in to steal all the parts of Chucky. I like that nice little wink to the audience, like, yeah. Love those things, because it also says these are all in the same universe. And then that just kind of gets people like me, get my mind going about what that would be like. The first kill in the film is already more blood than in most of the other films. You know, when Tiffany slits the throat of Bailey, and you immediately realize that her character is a serial killer. She's very comfortable with killing. She loves killing. And I think her introduction is perfect, basically. It's not just that, but it's also shows her level of persuasion with people, that she's very good at getting people to do things for her, which will become extremely important throughout the entire film, obviously, to help, move things along. The introduction of Tiffany is done in a way that you immediately understand who she is, another serial killer who worships Charles Lee Ray. That's the biggest aspect of it. And then you realize that they actually had a past, that she was actually a girlfriend of Charles Lee Ray before he died, and she found the ring that he had stolen from a victim, and he just had it because it was worth a lot of money, but that comes out when she was thinking this entire time, oh, it's because he loves me and he's going to propose to me, and that kind of sets up the disappointment that is their relationship for this entire film, which is kind of a weird thing to see in a film like the serial killer love story. Very interesting, but I'll comment more about that as we go on. The new cobbled together Chucky look is really great. It's another level of creepy that it's always nice to kind of like take it up a notch as you're going further into a franchise. But also it's very reminiscent of a Frankenstein. Obviously this is called Bride of Chucky because it's supposed to be like Bride of Frankenstein, which Tiffany ends up watching in the bathtub before she dies and then becomes the bride of Chucky Frankenstein, basically. So I do like that they kind of matched his look up with that. I also like the fact that it just looks so sloppy and cobbled together because that's literally what was done. You know, Tiffany was doing it herself. And I do really like that montage, how they shot it of her kind of putting him back together. It was kind of like in Child's Play 2, but better, in my opinion. Way better. It's obvious in this that Jade is a rebellious teen. They're really setting Jade and Jesse up to have this, like, complicated love situation where, like, the world is against them. They're in love and they want to be together, but the world is against them. And they're supposed to not end up together, but they're so madly in love, you know, that type of thing. Obviously, Jade's Uncle Warren is the main reason that they're having a hard time being together. And that just gets worse and worse and worse when Chucky and Tiffany walk into their lives. They really put Jennifer Tilly's boobs front and center. Before she is Tiffany the doll, Tiffany the human, boobs right out there. Now, that's not something I need in films, but I will also say that if it's a situation where the actor or actress is fine with it, that's something they're totally good with doing in a film. Like, I'm fine with that. But I just don't like the situation where it's like, and you've heard, I have heard about it before, where an actress is kind of like, I don't really want to do a nude scene, and they're forced into it still. Those are the issues I have. But when there are actors and actresses who are fine with kind of bearing more skin and kind of putting things more out there, that's fine. As long as it's a consensual thing like that, I'm good with it. And I don't happen to know what Jennifer Tilly's take on it was, though. As soon as Damien, the character played by Alexis Arquette, by the way, R.I.P. unfortunately. Alexis Arquette was a really good actress. As soon as Damien is introduced, you know that he'll end up getting killed because he's a fake serial killer, and Tiffany doesn't really seem to like him all that much, and he mishandles Chucky. That's another thing that ends up happening in all these films, that if someone kind of like gets rough with Chucky, they're going to end up dying. I think it happens in every instance of someone doing that, roughing them up, that they end up getting. I like the moment that Damien talks about Chucky being so 80s. That's kind of like a wink to the audience. He's basically saying, like, this is so passé. Like, this is so yesterday. And it's definitely that wink to the audience to be like, look, we know there hasn't been an installment in this franchise in 7 years at this point, but here you go. Hopefully you don't also feel like Damien that this is very passé at this point. Chucky looks great while he's killing Damien, but smothering, kind of lame. Again, another lame death. There are a lot of lame deaths in all the Chucky films, in my opinion, but again, it comes down to mainly how is Brad Dourif doing the voice amazingly, which is the answer, and how is Chucky acting, what the puppet's doing, the facial expressions, the yelling, all that type of stuff really goes into it to make it more impactful, and that stuff is there, so that's good. But you can come up with some cooler kills, which they end up doing, which I'm happy about. The quote, I thought this was a really funny line, "I'll kill anybody, but I'll only sleep with somebody I love." Just kind of shows the complicated nature of Tiffany as a character. She's down to kill any person, and she doesn't really feel much affection for humans in general, obviously, but she has this one person who she's in love with, and that's who she wants to be with. Warren is a real ass who abuses his power, and it makes you believe that he's going to eventually become a victim of Chucky and or Tiffany, and ends up being the case. They work together. That's their first teamwork kill, I believe. Well, unless you consider Damien because of the distraction and the handcuffing aspect that Tiffany did, but I wouldn't really call it that. Well, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, that's her first teamwork kill is Warren, played by John Ritter, also R.I.P., was a good actor. You get this weird look into the personal life of Charles Lee Ray and Tiffany. They have a normal relationship set of issues, too. Like, that's kind of the weird thing, but also interesting and cool thing about the film. Excuse me, is it's putting a kind of normal face on a serial killer love relationship. It's a very weird thing, but I think that's what's one of the very intriguing things about the film, and it's certainly something fresh for the franchise. introducing another character like this who is the counterpart of Chucky, but also wants to change him in certain ways, and does for a little bit within the film, but at the end of the film, he kind of reverts back to his old ways, which I think that's what the knife thing's all about, which I'll talk about more. You get the idea Tiffany has mastered getting whatever she wants from guys, but not the one she loves. I think it's interesting that they set her character up as literally being able to talk guys into a lot of different things pretty easily, but the one person who she loves and who she wants to be with and convince to marry her and treat her right and stuff like that is the one person that she has no influence over. So you kind of sympathize, you kind of end up sympathizing with her somewhat. Pause for horror hydration. And I like that aspect of it, that she's kind of like a complicated character within the film. They could have gone the route of her just being like kind of like a stock character, but she's very complicated. You gotta love how Tiffany is watching Bride of Frankenstein while she gets killed in the bathtub, or before she gets killed in the bathtub. And it's foreshadowing, obviously, about what's going on with the entire film. Also, Tiffany's bathtub electrocution scene is shot in a really fun and playful way, especially with all those bubbles kind of floating around in the air. I really like that aspect of it. They did a nice job there. Of course, Tiffany ends up gothing up her doll body, because that's who she is. She needs that to mirror her in real life. And let's be honest, we would do that too, for the most part, if we were turned into dolls, wouldn't we? I know I would. I appreciate how Tiffany encourages Chucky to be more creative with his weapons of death. At this point, she ends up speaking for the entire audience, because I'm sure other people watching this review right now were also thinking, Chucky tends to use a knife a lot, like Tiffany was saying, and she's kind of like, that's so old, let's kind of update it. So there are a lot of those types of comments that are made in the film, just like Damien saying that Chucky's so 80s, about updating it, about setting a new standard and kind of refreshing the franchise. And I think that is definitely what this film ends up doing. So it's cool that there are so many of those moments of dialogue and nods to the audience in that mode. Pretty fun death for Warren, with the nails being propelled to his face by the airbag that was in the glove compartment. I like that. And once again, it was teamwork between Tiffany and Chucky, so I like that aspect as well. That's kind of showing the influence of Tiffany. She's like, look, change your old ways of always using a knife, go this new creative way. It's showing that she's starting to have a bit of impact on him and starting to sway his mind a little bit in the way he's thinking. But like I said, it reverts back towards the end. The tracking shot of Chucky crawling, very creepy. Shot very well. They did it from the back and the front of him just like crawling. When he's crawling up to the cop car, what do they call him? Needle nose or needle face or needle head? I don't know. But where he, puts the rag in the gas tank and then lights it and blows up the car. Yeah, very creepy how they shot that. Good job. Cool twist to this that Jade and Jesse end up seeming like they are a serial killer couple. They become the perfect patsies for Tiffany and Chucky. But then at the same time, it becomes apparent that Tiffany and Chucky want to use their bodies, and that would still become a problem, because then they're high profile at this point because of all the stuff that they did, making them look like a serial killer couple. So it would kind of actually at that point be better if they tried to get other bodies. And I'm going to just throw this out there. The people that they kill on the waterbed in the motel probably would have been a good option to just try and put your souls into those bodies, because those people weren't being looked for by the law. Just saying. Warren's still alive. I didn't see that coming because he'd been in there for a while in Jesse's van. But I do think there was a reason for this, because it seems like it's kind of a nothing, like he just like startles you because he's like, oh my gosh, he's still alive, and then he gets killed. I think it was intentionally put in there because it delays the stench of the body. So they could take the van and be doing other things without smelling the decomposition of the body because he was still alive. So in my mind, that's probably why that was chosen, because it's then David when he finally shows up and is in the van with them, who says that it kind of smells kind of bad, because at that point he's been dead, I guess, like kind of overnight in there, and then, you know, obviously the decomposition is going on. The swinger couple who wanders into the motel room are obviously there to increase the body count, but like I said, they should have been used by Tiffany and Chucky to have a soul escape, basically. But yeah, I mean, you know, as an audience member at this point, you're like, ah, yes, they are fodder for the killing, or for Chucky and Tiffany. And nice use of the over-the-bed mirror. It's a very cool death scene, except for the CGI mirror shards. When you're kind of like that shot looking up, and you're seeing all the shards coming down at the camera, which makes it look like maybe this was a film that they did some 3D with. I don't know if that was true or not, but someone can let me know in the comments. But that moment kind of looked like, oh, this would be like the perfect 3D moment. But the CGI never ages all that well. So, like, that part doesn't look too great, but it's not focused on super long, so it doesn't kill that scene. It's a cool scene. I love how they just get nailed by all these mirror shards, and then there's, like, the explosion of the waterbed. Love it. And it's mixed with blood. That's another thing. And it also makes me think to another good waterbed death scene in Pieces. Check that out if you like waterbed death scenes. The doll sex scene is a good mix of ridiculous and funny. Already talked about that one. Nice to see Kathy Najimy pop up in this as the cleaning lady at the motel. If people don't know Kathy Najimy, she was one of the sisters, Sanderson sisters, in Hocus Pocus and Hocus Pocus 2. And she's a great actress, really. David getting hit by the truck was pulled off really well. That was a mess. The fact that he just gets turned into a hamburger, basically. They do it really quick so that he, like, steps into the road and then he's hit almost immediately. So it is kind of shocking, like, you don't see it coming. And he's, like, the best character in the film, to be honest. Like, he's the closest to a voice of reason that you end up getting in the film, really. Like, he's a very nice, relatable guy, which the most interesting thing about that is this is 1998 when there weren't a lot of, like, normal person characters who are gay in film. They're always in there to be, like, funny, ridiculous villains, stuff like that. So it was very cool to see a character who just happens to be someone who's gay. And they're just like a normal character, and they actually end up being kind of the voice of reason. So it actually sucked when he died. You know, I felt the worst about his death. I mean, obviously you don't feel for people like Warren because he was just a jerk from the get-go, but yeah. Here's another good quote, and this is a really nice kind of wink to the audience quote that I loved in the film. If it was a movie, it'd take 3 or 4 sequels just to do it justice, which is what Chucky says when they're in the RV. And he's, like, that nod to the audience is literally saying, this is what we're trying to do with this film. We are trying to make this the sequel, finally, that does justice to the franchise. And I think they are. I mean, they really did pull that off with the film. So I like that line. I am going to note, when they're in the RV and they open that closet door in the RV and you see the older couple in their dead, you can see them breathing. Just a note, I know the shot didn't stay on them super long, but you could see them breathing for sure. I don't know if anyone else caught that. Tiffany doing Jade's makeup to look just like her signals visually that there's an intention there to take her body. Because if you noticed, after she inhabits the doll's body, like I talked about, she does the makeup and sets her up to look like the human her. Now she's doing up Jade to look like the doll her who looked like the human her. And she's going to look like the human her again. But she never actually gets there, unfortunately, for Tiffany. In the fight between Chucky and Tiffany in the RV, there was some pretty entertaining dialogue going back and forth. You really legitimately believe that they were having a fight. And that speaks to the great acting of Brad Dourif and Jennifer Tilly. They both did a wonderful job. The way those two play off each other in this film is why the film works so well, in my opinion. Like, their characters are so strong and their character interactions are so strong that it makes the film. It really does for me. Chucky going back to using the knife at the end shows a break from Tiffany and him going back to his old ways, which signals to Tiffany that he's not going to be, that he's really not what she's looking for in life. She does say that she still loves him, but that they'd be better together in death, in essence. She knows she's kind of fated to be with him forever. And at this point, she's gone so far and kind of made her bed in that sense. But she does have this change of heart, and she's just like, yeah, you know, this relationship isn't what I was thinking it was going to be. And it's obviously symbolized by him switching back to using a knife again, because that's showing the old him before he started to show some change and some influence from Tiffany. And here he goes, just reverting right back to it. Also, something we've learned at this point, if you've been watching through all the films, Chucky never dies the first time he goes down. Same thing ends up happening for Tiffany at the end, but I'm going to talk about that particular situation in a little bit. But yeah, as we know at this point, he's never dead the first time. Funny line, another funny line. When Chucky stabs Tiffany, and then he says, "Get off my knife." Like, that right there is another very clear indicator, in case people weren't getting it at this point, that he is done with Tiffany. He doesn't really have much of any feelings towards her. And whatever goodwill, whatever love he was feeling for her earlier, kind of died when they had that argument in the RV, which was started by Jade, you know, very intellectually started by Jade. So she did a good job. She accomplished what she needed to. The baby being born at the end. Okay. Looks gross, looks creepy and scary. Okay, so plus on that side of it. Kind of just ridiculous and over the top, in my opinion. I really don't think they needed that at that point in the film. I mean, obviously it does. Knowing that the next film is Seed of Chucky, obviously it sets it up for that. But I don't think we needed that at the end of the film. It is kind of that like cliffhanger thing. But it just, to me, it seems like the film just ends more on a ridiculous note when it really didn't need to do that. Like, you already introduced something interesting and new to the franchise. You don't need to introduce yet something else new at the very end to set it up for the next one. Just handle that when you get to it, you know? I don't know. That's just my feeling on it. Again, a lot of great style in the camera work in this film. Really, really enjoy that aspect of it. Great soundtrack as well, especially like the White Zombie in there. Regardless of what I will say from time to time about Rob Zombie films and me not really liking them, always been a fan of his music. Always also just been a fan of him as a person for, you know, having the ability to wear different hats and like make music and make film. So I appreciate that. This movie is pretty early to have a normal person who happens to be gay in the film. Just normal character, I mean. Pretty progressive in that sense. Already kind of talked about that. I do like the relationship parallel that's going on in this film. It's Jade and Jesse being the young, idealized lovers at the same time as there's Tiffany and Chucky, who are the older and extremely unconventional lovers, and how their two relationships parallel one another, and how basically the relationship of Tiffany and Chucky is so messed up and so toxic that it is leaking over into negatively influencing the relationship of Jade and Jesse, obviously because they're being seen as serial killers. So it just goes to show that certain loves in the world, certain people getting together and having a relationship can be catastrophic, not just for the two of them, but for people outside of their relationship. And I think that's a little bit of what was intended with this film. So, obviously, I enjoyed this one. It's not like a phenomenal film, in my opinion, but out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm giving it a very good 3.5 star rating. It's up there with the first Child's Play film, although I think I like the original Child's Play a little bit more. This is still really good, and I really did enjoy it. Love to hear your opinions at this point. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, in between, and give me like a sentence or two letting me know why. Do me a quick favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. Also hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing at least 4 a week, which I think is a good amount. I'm putting in a lot of work, so hook me up, help me out. But regardless, thank you so much for checking this out, and thank you for watching through these videos for my reviews of the Chucky films. I'm going to be continuing, rest assured. And I think I am going to do the 2018 remake, even though people really hate it. I just got to see what my opinion is on it. But thank you so much for watching this, and until next time, keep it brutal.